Yeah, so just a little bit about us. Haley kind of covered it, but this will be my 6th year of teaching total. I started teaching at Nixa. Well, I had a little half year at Glendale and Springfield because I graduated college in December, took over for a teacher that left mid-year and had a half year. That was an adventure. And then went to Nixa, spent 5 years there. I took this past year off to have another baby. And so I have 2 little boys right now, 2 years old and 4 months old. And then I'll be coming back to Nixa this next year. So I co-taught 4 of those. Now this will be my 6th year. And 3 of those 4 years were with Rachel. And when I went to Nixa, I had no clue what co-teaching was. I didn't even, honestly, I'd like to say I had a great college education, and I do think I did, but I maybe heard the word co-teaching, but I don't know that I really knew what it was. And then I went to Nixa and they said, you're going to co-teach. And I thought, cool. What's that? And then when I did the new teacher training, we also did co-teacher training. And then I thought, well, this seems pretty cool to have another teacher in there, but little did I know it would change my teaching journey for the better. And now I ask to co-teach when I can, and especially with Rachel. So
I'm Rachel. This will be my 21st year of teaching. I taught for 2 years in Carthage, and then I taught for 10 years in Branson, and then whatever year that makes my in Nixa. So whoever wants to map that, that's cool.
Math teacher.
Yeah. So, but I've done what?
You started in 2015.
Okay,
so that was 9.
So this will be my 10th year in Nixa.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I've taught 3 years. I've done 3 years of co-teaching at the elementary level. I found a teacher in Branson that took the leap with me, and we did that. And then I've 13 years, I figure, is at the high school level. You can see it's mostly math stuff. I did do a year of English too, which again was not my thing for sure, but again, it was a great experience. So yeah, it's funny that Sydney says that, because that was exactly like I was assigned to her, like, okay, like I knew I was going to co-teach. That's part of my job, right? And so like I didn't know who my teacher was, and so yeah, she like walks in and is told, oh yeah, by the way, you have co-teaching. I at least knew. I just didn't know who my teacher was going to be, which, you know, that's always like rolling the dice when it comes down to it. So, yeah, so I've had a little bit more.
lucky you.
Yeah, I know. But, so, okay, so that's a little bit about us.
Yeah. So we just wanted to know, I mean, you know, when we heard we were doing this, we thought, well, what's our audience? And so we were just curious if any of you had done co-teaching, or if you're elementary, secondary, you know, kind of what your thoughts, feelings, opinions, or if you had done co-teaching, hated it, loved it, didn't know anything about it, just kind of wanted to poll the audience and see what your thoughts, feelings, opinions were.
I co-taught, and I really, really loved it with one person and really, really hated it with another person. So I think it kind of depends on your pairing.
100%.
Yeah.
I have also co-taught as the like content classroom teacher, not from the SPED point of view, but I think I have had 2 class within a class co-teachers, both phenomenal. And I think really just figuring out how to work effectively together was the thing that it didn't start out phenomenally either time, but we worked it out and figured it out together.
I think that can almost take a year.
Yeah.
Or more. Yeah. That can be hard.
I co-taught English 2 for years and loved it. And then because I loved it, when I transferred to the library, I kind of just, and I'm like, Haley, I'm going to come to your class.
I was going to say that Sheila and I both content teachers have co-taught together too.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is a different dynamic.
Yeah. And that was awesome. And then we had like a brand new teacher one year, and I'm like, oh, Sally, I'm going to come to your class every, because she was like my former student. And so I got to just like voluntarily co-teach. And then at the alternative school, I would go over and co-teach like an hour a day. So and then I teach online now, and I co-taught last year with another, I teach English too, and it was like, it wasn't a disaster, it's just that I did all the work, and then it was like, she'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I can't make it to class today, like 2 minutes before class, you know, so one of those like deals, but it's like, well, I would be doing it by myself anyway. She wasn't difficult, it's just she wasn't there, so.
Yeah, question. Is co-teaching always the content teacher with the special ed teacher? Is this a renaming of class within a class or?
Yes, so class within a class, is like, you know, you're talking about your inclusion part, and I don't know how many, but we got away from it a few years ago. I mean, we've always co-taught. So
I have always heard of it with the terminology of co-teaching.
Yes, so yes, it is the same, it's like CWC, class within a class, but like, however, it was rebranded, I don't know when, I don't know why, I don't know, Kaylee, do you know?
I think it's a more like inclusive measure. So instead of having like, oh, this is your table of kids that have disabilities and I'm gonna water it down for you, it's like they're integrated within the class, and that additional co-teacher may be helping them, they may be helping gen ed kids, they may be, so more of like a team approach.
And that's kind of how Sheila and I, as the content teachers, approached it, and how with my special education co-teachers, we approached it, and that was most effective for those dynamics.
Absolutely, yeah. You ladies,
I'm coming from a little different, I was a school counselor,
Oh,
so
okay.
I did a lot of social emotional teaching.
Yeah.
With the classroom teacher, not the sped kids, everybody was in there together, so it wasn't really a sped situation, but there was a lot of work with the classroom teacher.
Yeah, for
when
sure.
we were doing that SEL. So.
Yeah.
I personally have not co-taught. However, when I was at Republic, and it was a model, class within a class is what it was called. But as an administrator, I observed co-teaching at Marshall High School, and I feel like it's an excellent model. So.
Let me know, Jamie.
Last year was my first year and I felt like I sucked at it. Because it was also a brand new teacher that I didn't know. She was new to the district, but we ended up meshing well, but I felt like I could have done way more than I did. I always taught when she was gone. I think I just had performance anxiety in front of a real math teacher. Since I'm a special ed teacher, I didn't want to be like, do something incorrectly. I think that was a big part of me last year. And this year I'll be co-teaching again, but with a different person. So, and a different content, different subject. So we'll see if I do better.
Yeah.
Just a little bit better. That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah, exactly. It's maybe
1% better.
Yeah, it takes a while. So, I mean, obviously, everybody kind of knows the basics of it, but this is just kind of what we were told when we first started of reasons to co-teach. So to just kind of reduce the ratio, students to teachers, meet your needs. I think one big thing, kind of like Jamie was talking about, it can be hard when you first go in. And I think it probably took us a semester minimum, if not a year, to figure out how to mesh. So if you're going from teacher to teacher or whatever, I don't, it can take you a little bit to find the real vibe between the two of you. And I think the longer you can do it with the same teacher, the better you're going to be, which you don't always get that luxury. I think that's a luxury that we had to be able to do it for multiple years in a row together, and not even necessarily the same. We did get the same subject, and then we were able to do algebra 1B and algebra 1, and we were able to even sometimes do multiple hours in a day. So we could even, adjust things by hour, not necessarily just by day. So to be able to have that, I think that was a big luxury for us. And that only came from the fact that we had administrative support, and we also had the support of our department heads, that we could go to them and say, hey, we want to do this, make this happen. And then the admin would try to work master schedule to make that work and make those changes. But I mean, I say admin, but honestly, now as I look back at it, it was more for department heads kind of.
Yeah, and I think they saw the success. They saw that it was successful, and so then they were able to put it to use as well. So when this was just something that was given to us
that all like.
Yeah, so I don't know, are you guys familiar with these? So these are like when you think co-teaching, this is kind of the first thing that we were taught is like, hey, there are different ways to co-teach. And so in our top row here, we have like one teach, one observe, one teach, one assist. And so, the studies show, or I don't even know what studies show. Okay, I take that back. Okay, when you're taught about it, you're taught.
That sounded
That
cool.
sounded really cool, and that was not. So I'm taking that back. Okay, so one teach, one observe, one teach, one assist. That is like, they would always say, like when we were taught, it was like, okay, you should minimally use those two. Because really what you're doing in that situation is you're not fully using two certified teachers in the classroom to do what you should do.
To me, that would be more of a para vibe.
Yeah.
Mhm. And so, but the thing is that like, I mean, that's probably what we did a lot in that first semester as we learned each other, because I've always thought as a SPED teacher, I'm walking into Sydney's domain, right? So like, she was very welcoming to me and like, I mean, but it is her classroom 100% of the time. And I am just coming in and I'm not there all day, And so, and I don't know if that's the correct perspective, but that's how I always took it. And so I want to follow what she is doing, And so, that worked really well for us as we learned, like, okay, what does she value? What is important to her in her classroom? We had conversations about it, but like watching each other in action is another thing. This is also beneficial. Like I would have to do classroom observations on kiddos, as we're doing evaluations and that kind of stuff. And it was really good for me just to be able to sit back there and like, watch that one kid and take my like minute by minute notes about them. Or if we were struggling with the kid, or a group of students and we're like, what in the heck is happening? It would be good for one of us. And as we got into it, it wasn't just me. It might be me teaching and Sydney watching of like, okay, what is actually happening that is causing the struggle or is causing like that an official thing for happening, or whatever. So minimally use the top row, but they are very beneficial. So, Jamie is saying like, okay, that learning curve of a new teacher, well then use those. That's really beneficial to learn and to like know what's going on.
I think it's beneficial to switch off on those too.
Yes.
To say,
yeah,
and from Jamie's perspective to say, hey, can I teach today? Or can I, like, if there's a lesson that you're comfortable with, because there were often times that Rachel was like, yeah, I'm not teaching that. Yeah, nope, I'm not doing that. So I'm not feeling it. But, or, she's like, one step equations, I got it.
I can do that.
Do it. I'll take it. And I want the opportunity to teach, and this is one I feel confident about. So, I'm going to take it. And I appreciated that too. Or having the multiple hours, that was really nice because let's say we had second hour and fourth hour together. I'd teach second hour and then she would be like, oh yeah, I'll take the reins fourth hour because I saw you do it once. So now I'm ready to take the reins or something. So that's kind of nice to switch off and on too.
And I will say, I'll just go ahead and say this, like performance anxiety, right? Yeah, very real for me as well. And one of the best things that happened is like Sydney would not let me be that person. Like
That's
she would,
I feel.
so she would be like, okay, great. Well, what are you going to do today?
Yeah.
And so like, oh, you want to do bell work? Okay, great. You're going to do bell work every hour, and so that was really good, like the personality difference. And we'll talk more about that later, like those strengths and weaknesses. But like, I mean, it was like a push, like, okay, like jump off the cliff, like do it. And so that was really, that really helped me in that
I
situation.
didn't do that day one though.
No, it was day 2.
Yeah.
So, okay. And then, okay, so then station teaching, you can see like your red and blue dots here. Those are like the teachers. And so stations are when there's like the teachers are both engaged in a station, but then there's also like a student, 1 or 2 or more student directed to where they are having to be independent and those types of things. So I will say on
Studies show this doesn't work.
yeah, I was gonna say station teaching and parallel teaching, it's like you gotta have the space and the like minimal distraction, noise level, like all those things, like they're really hard in a high school classroom because kids aren't quiet and they are distracted all the time. And it's hard. We did stations a lot when we were like doing a group activity, it's where we were basically just rotating the room, but we were hitting groups of kids, and so like around the world or, that's not really stations, but it is in a way because the kids would group themselves, and that kind of
Or
stuff.
like you worked in this yeah, you kids do this and you kids do this and we'll help and we'll help. But also in a 45, I mean, we have 45-minute blocks or 48-minute blocks or whatever. Well, you spend 5 minutes of, hey, here's what we're gonna do today. And then you spend 5 minutes of, okay, let's get in your groups. And then you spend 5 minutes of, okay, well, you still need to get in your groups. And then you spend another 5 minutes of, okay, well, now this is again what we're gonna do today. And then another 5 minutes of, okay, now you need to move your bags. And another 5 minutes of, okay, well, don't pick up your desks. And then another 5 minutes of, like, okay, well, we're still gonna keep doing this. And then it's like, okay, well, we have 10 minutes left, so we probably need to actually do this.
Let's
again.
rotate.
And-
Yeah.
So, okay, time to switch. Okay, great. Well, we all did one problem, so now we gotta put our desk back that I told you not to move in the first place. So, all right, well, that was really fun. Let's do it next hour. Yeah. Test tomorrow. Great. But
It does require a lot of front loading and pre-planning if
Yeah.
you do want that to go
Yeah.
like effectively in the same classroom.
It's not a one-day
Wait.
thing.
Yeah.
It's gotta be something that you've devoted some time to. We're gonna do 2 or 3 days of this, knowing that day 1 is gonna be rocky. We're actually gonna get something done maybe in day 3, or something like that. So, parallel teaching is when you basically divide the class in half. Sydney teaches a part of the lesson, I teach a part of the lesson, and then like halfway through the hour, we would switch those groups, or something like that. So, again, your distraction level, your noise level, it's not like, I use this significantly in my elementary experience because we were in this great position in the hallway where we were at the end of the hallway. So I could take a group outside or into like the little outdoor foyer and we could do that. And it was quiet and it was, and so that was super beneficial in that setting, but it all was because of the room arrangement. And so again, that was, so anyways, that's parallel teaching. And then our last 2, alternative teaching and teaming. Teaming is what we're doing now. So we are both up here giving instruction, giving information, tossing it back and forth. It helps, minimizes kids falling asleep because they're like, oh, change your voice, or personality wise, if I'm teaching something and struggling, Sydney can pitch in and be like, here's what she actually means, or.
that's what we did most often, but usually it's one of us would be up and one of us would be walking around, or one of us would be mobile and one of us would be writing, but most of the time it was interjecting. But again, it takes a minute. It takes a minute to be comfortable interrupting each other. It takes a minute to kind of read each other's body language and to be okay with the, you need a second.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Alternative teaching is great for taking out small groups of kiddos and being able to, one of us is gonna stay with the majority of the class and do instruction or an hour, and that small group is doing some remediation, or they're making up a test because we had 5 kids gone on test day, or we are redoing the test because it was terrible. Enrichment, it could be a variety of things, but that's kind of what that alternative is. In that situation, it was usually not in the same classroom.
Yeah.
It was usually like, okay, I'm going to take a group to my room today and we're going to do this. Because again, that distraction level and the environment and those types of things. So,
and we always made a point to split the kids, not necessarily sped kids and reg ed kids. We just split the class, whether it was 60-40 or whatever, but there was a mixture in both. And the kids knew you're either in Miss McGowan's group or you're in Miss Davis's group. And then sometimes we'd flip them. We'd say, oh, today you're going to be in Miss Davis's group or Mr. McGowan's group.
Yeah.
And some kids, they'd say, I don't want to go to Miss McGowan today. And it's like, okay, fine, you can stay with me. Yeah, it's fine, no problem. And so it wasn't you have to, but it was we just want smaller classes today. We just want smaller groups just to work with kids. And so it wasn't ever a bit, they're high schoolers. They understand, they know what you're doing. They're not,
Yeah.
But it was mostly like for test reviews or on test days too. We always tested in smaller groups, especially, to meet accommodations for kids. So we always tested in smaller groups, and there were kids and other kids too, that she would talk to them prior, kids that needed those 504 IEP accommodations of, hey, we're going to split into smaller groups. What location would you like to test in? What accommodations would you like to have? That kind of thing. So to be able to meet those, that was really important. Yeah, obviously.
One thing of success that I found in working with a co-teacher, it took me a while to figure it out, but was better for kids, was to give kids the opportunity in all kids, every kid in the classroom, and say, okay, if you want this passage read aloud to you, you will go with Ms. Bain. You can stay there and finish your test or come back when you're done. And it was an option for everybody. And then we also were very intentional about making sure that we switched that. So sometimes I would read aloud, sometimes she would. Or if there was like a differentiated, like this one is a little bit easier, you could choose that one. This one's a little bit harder, making sure that we didn't always make it our special education teacher doing the easier option, but also providing the options to everybody. So it wasn't like we were singling out the students with special needs, but everybody could, if this option is beneficial to you, then please use it. That was the luxury of having the second person there.
Yes.
I think we switched groups, but I don't think I ever like went to year round, which that might not have been a bad idea.
I think we talked about it a few times, but I am technology deficient. And so that was always a struggle. Like I was comfortable in my own little like world of what I knew, and
spaces.
I did like if
Her room didn't have the technology that yours did.
I know.
If Sydney's room, if I was in Sydney's room, I wanted Sydney there just in case something went wrong because I couldn't fix it. So I'll be honest, like I think that was kind of our barrier there because I was always like, oh, that's a great idea, but
Put on a test day or something like that, like she's saying, to give them the option and have the variety.
And some special education teachers don't have their own classroom, so that
Yeah.
could not be a luxury.
Well, and some
for
days
them.
she didn't.
Right.
Some hours she did. Some hours, So that was, that's great.
any other comments or questions about like these? I mean, this is kind of the foundation of what I would say the foundation of like what we were trying to do when it talks about, you know, like co-teaching. What does that look like? It could be kind of a gray area. So this is just kind of that, you know, here's where you build.
Is co-teaching a best practice? Is there data to support that students, especially special ed students, benefit more from this style than another?
Yes,
absolutely.
Marilyn Friend is who you would look. Marilyn Friend is the researcher that you should look up.
Okay.
It's
Now,
all,
I would say it is not beneficial. It is not best practice for every student, right? So, I mean, you get to a certain point and you have to realize as educators, and this is really hard as like an IEP team or whatever, that like, although you may want your student in that inclusive setting, it may not be where they best would receive instruction, right? So we're talking about least restricted environment, but we have to talk about free and appropriate education as well. And so like we have to provide what is best for that student. And like it may be that at some point that reg ed co-taught essential skills, what they're aiming for is too high for a student, and that student really does need, I hate to say too high, that's not the right word.
too fast.
It's too fast,
Not
or
enough, like,
they need the like a certain, you know, environment where you can reword things and you can use, you know,
Or they need a
different
break for that
strategies.
subject.
Yes,
There might be a subject they need a break during the day.
yes. So I think that is difficult to find that balance, you know, towards inclusion and with your reg ed peers, but also where is that student going to get the best instruction for them? So.
I like that you guys talked about like the one teach, one observe, and the one teach, one assist, because I remember when I was a new special educator, it's like we know all about the little 6 methods, but we're not content specialists. So when I got pushed into an 8th grade ELA classroom, I'm like, I don't know anything about soliloquies, but I'm supposed to parallel teach, like I'm an interventionist. So I need to watch this content specialist deliver instruction for a year so that I know what's going on in this class, because I'm not a content specialist. I'm not certified in math. I'm certified to be an interventionist. So.
And there were times too that she would, you know, look over the notes prior, which I know took a lot of time and effort on her part, and I appreciated that very much.
Yeah.
But then she would take the time to look over the notes and then come in prior to a lesson and say, hey, I was looking over these last night, which I know is out. We have enough to do outside of contract hours. Teachers work outside of contract time. What? And come in and say, hey, yeah, what was this example? I tried to work this out and I'm not quite following along. And then I say, oh yeah, I was gonna work this out, or this is what I meant by this definition. And that, you know, that takes time on her part. That is something, and it also checks me a little bit too, to say, this is how I would explain it. And she might say, well, that didn't make sense to me. Well, that's another student right there that maybe that doesn't make sense to them. And I need to think of another way to explain it or another way to approach that. And that helps me as an educator as well, that, you know, another perspective. And I really appreciated that for sure.
Yeah. Are you guys budgeted extra planning time so that you can co-teach? Have you considered requesting that?
We have, so that was always something that went into like planning for like the year, and it was always like, that would be ideal if we could have that.
Yeah.
But then it just became like, there's so many different factors.
We have extra required training.
Yeah.
Do you have
I believe-
common planning time with that content area, or do you have? Yeah, that's one thing we did at Republic a couple of years that really helped, was they changed it so that the co-teachers, instead of all the sped teachers having plan at one time, they staggered us out, and you had planned with your content that you co-taught with. So like I would plan with ELA, but my partner sped teacher, he would plan with math.
And in support of the co-teaching, do you also have equipment or furniture that's flexible, seating, flexible, like movable?
Yeah, so I mean, yes and no. So
That's up
Sydney
to
is
the
always
teacher.
really, Sydney, yeah, I was gonna say, Sydney was always really good about being like, what's up for grabs? I'm gonna try something different, like her, you know, but you know, as far as like some of, I mean, we have those desks, you know, like with
up
the
to the
chairs
teacher.
attached to them.
Yeah.
So you do, yeah.
Mhm.
And so like, those are two things I would definitely request from your administration, like, you know, we've done this 4 years now, and we're gonna continue to do it, but these are the things we need. We need more planning time together,
Yeah.
flexible seating,
New.
new for you.
Right, yeah.
You don't have a desk.
Right.
You have to bring all
Well,
your
and that was
desks.
the other
Like,
thing.
it's
That's one
hard.
thing that I have always made a point, is I think it should be a requirement that any teacher that has a co-teacher has a separate teaching desk space. I don't think it has to
Absolutely.
be the same.
Yeah.
But I have always said that if I have a co-teacher in my room, that co-teacher needs their own desk,
Why?
their own space.
Why? I think that's important, is like, why
Well,
was that
number-
important to you?
Number one, I don't want you in my space. And number two, because it's uncomfortable for me and for you. I don't want you to feel like you're invading my space, and I don't want you to invade my space. So, but also you haul your stuff around all day long, and I want you to feel comfortable to, if you're coming in and out in between hours and you want to throw something there, throw it there. If you want to have 3 cups of whatever, have 3 cups. She never has that, but I do all day long. So, throw your stuff wherever. If you need to work with a student, pull them wherever. And I think it's important that you feel comfortable. It is my classroom, but you're there, whether you're there for 45 minutes or you're there for 4 hours out of the day, you should feel comfortable to have your space within my space. And I think that's very important that you have that in there.
I'm just curious, at Nixa, how many co-teaching jurors do you have? I mean, is it an expectation if I teach in Nixa that I need people to do this? Or how does that, I'm just curious as far as teachers looking for jobs, particularly sped teachers, I'm just interested.
So I
I
mean,
don't know from the sped perspective.
It depends on the number of kids that we have that have the class within class co-teaching minutes. So
Okay.
depending on how many kids
Right.
that we have
That makes sense.
in the school at the time, and each subject area determines the amount of co-teaching classes. So
A lot of times in high school, they have tested classes or co-taught, so like algebra and English, all the way up to English 4, but a lot of times they won't do like history or science because they're not tested areas,
Yeah.
so
well, it's also,
usually English and math.
we usually do it based on disability. So
Okay.
if they don't have there's not a learning disability in science and history. So
Right.
that's where we have the paras. So that's why we only do co-teaching in English and math.
Gotcha.
But we do have para supports in those other classes, and even some extracurricular classes, not extracurricular, what are they?
Elective.
Elective, that's the word,
Yeah.
the E word.
Other
Some, depending on their disability level and how much they need support.
So they don't co-teach biology?
No, not anymore.
Huh, that's interesting.
We have a para.
And from a reg ed perspective, if you if you were anti-co-teaching, there's enough teachers that would want to do it, that they'd say, well, I'll teach those courses and I'll co-teach. And then, so I don't know how it works from a.
Well, and I would just say, you know, that I think that is very true, but I also would challenge that rega teacher.
Yeah.
And say, and I would like
That's
to,
true.
we'll get to that
Yeah.
part here, because we're gonna get to like our pros and cons and those types of things. I would
100%.
challenge that rega teacher as to why you don't want to, because, there is so much good that comes from getting out of your comfort zone, as we all know.
Sure.
And so, you know, so, yeah.
This was just something, we both kind of just typed things into this presentation and then reworked it, whatever, but this is something she typed on a slide and I was like, I think this deserves its own slide. So she typed, try it, reflect, tweak it, and try it again. And I just feel like that should be the motto for the whole education in general. But
And that's what we did.
yes, and I just feel like that is, I almost think I might hang this up in my classroom this year. I don't know, but I just think that's so great because everything we did, I mean, minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, month to month, that's all we did. That's all we did. And whether it worked, whether it didn't, whether it was incredible, whether it totally sucked, that's all we did. You just got to try it. What worked, what didn't. Okay, what can we change? How can we change it? Who can we ask? Who can help us? And then let's give it another shot.
Yeah.
And that's all. And like, just be willing to change, be willing to try it again, be willing to fail, celebrate your successes. I feel like that's all we did.
Laugh about the
Every
failures,
day,
like
laugh about the
laugh really
failures.
hard and just be like,
Yes.
wow, that was
And
really terrible.
Yeah, I don't know. You threw that in there and I was like, this
Yeah.
deserves its own slide. So
Well, this, I mean, I would literally say that this was what
That's-
our relationship
yes,
was in the
absolutely.
classroom, was just this, like, even like 10 minutes into the class period being like, okay, nope, what are we gonna do now?
Yeah.
You know, and just like being okay
Yeah.
with it.
So we went through some pros and cons, just kind of from each perspective, because, you know, I think it's very different depending on which side of it you're on. So pros for me, I think it's always helpful just to have a second adult, to have somebody to talk back to you when nobody else is. I think I'm a very conversational teacher just in general. And so, you know, oftentimes I'll start like, hey, how's everybody doing? You know, anybody, how's your life going? Cool. Okay. Well, you know, anybody have anything good for dinner last night?
No one ate dinner? What?
Great. Okay. So then she'd throw things, and I'm like, oh, nobody ate dinner. Oh, did you eat dinner last night? Oh, okay. Cool. Well, great. Oh, you sardines on crackers. Yeah,
It's my
me
favorite.
too. Oh, great. Okay. Like, you know, just somebody, because then somebody will giggle, and you're like, oh, that was funny. You thought that was funny. Okay.
You're listening.
So then,
Yeah.
you know, like,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So just somebody to feed off of when you have 30 people just
Yes.
staring at you like you are just this robot standing in front of, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just nice. It's great. Oftentimes SPED teachers, they just have other strategies to approach, you know, all students and students from lower learning levels that maybe I haven't thought of, or maybe I don't remember, or things like that. So again, it just comes from having another adult in the room, another mind to contribute to your educational perspective. And I just think that's really great. And then, yeah, if no students are engaging, at least you got somebody else to throw it in there. And at least somebody else, I think it helps to have somebody else to be the bad guy sometimes. And it's just, it's nice to kind of work together.
And I'll start with my bottom one then, like tapping out. Like that was a big thing for us, is like, you know, one of us would be done with a student, or maybe it's just been a difficult day, you know, or whatever, and just be able to say, hey, I'm not dealing with this kiddo. The rest of the class period, please take them, you know, or whatever it might be. Or being able to say like, hey, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'll be gone for 10 minutes. You know, like, and just being able to say, like, to have that break and to be able to, like, yeah, Sydney's, I mean, she's ready to step up and be the bad guy today and really like put down the hammer, or I, you know, like, and so I think that that's really like, that's really beneficial, you know. For me, the top one is my biggest, like, you know, being able to spend time and build relationships with all students and teachers in the building. So like, I really feel like co-teaching with Sydney gave me an in with the math department. And like, I feel like I am a part of the math department now. Like our roles have changed, you know, from where we started, but like, I feel like that really included me, and that gave me an in with people that I may not have had. Not that they're not inclusive or anything, but just like, like that was beneficial for me. But then also just getting to know all students, right? Like, I mean, I love my students but I love all students and I love their perspectives. And so the more kids that you get to be involved with, the better, Also just being able to become a better teacher because I'm daily watching other teachers teach, right? So Sydney and others that I have co-taught are masterful teachers, and it has made me better, right? So I can use the different vocabulary, different strategies, and all these types of things. I can hear myself, like I can hear them in myself because I get to daily watch these great teachers at work. And that's why I would challenge those other teachers to say, oh, I don't want to co-teach. Well, then you're missing out. You're missing out on an opportunity to be better every single day because you're interacting with other teachers. And then being able to complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. That was something like, I am not a fantastic classroom manager in this large group setting, and like Sydney commands a class. And so, being able to, I can't get anybody's attention. Like, hey guys, like, like
a little elementary.
Yeah. Okay. See, but so we can we knew what each other's strengths and weaknesses were, and we could step in and be like, hey, let me handle, or
if somebody's crying, I'm probably not the best approach.
Yeah.
Yes,
we'll get to that. So, so I feel like, again, another perspective and strategy for teaching when kids don't get it, to be able to look out and say, okay, we've done 3 examples on this. How are you guys feeling? And they're looking at you like, okay, so someone else, like one of us would do a different example. We would say it a different way, or whatever. And so that's, again, just something that you can't have when you just have one teacher in the classroom. So
it's also really nice to be able to read the room, from front and back and side to side and whatever, while she's doing an example, I could be in the back and hearing the person say, why did she subtract that? And say, hey, Miss McGowan, why did you move that to the other side over there? Oh, well, because if we're doing it on this side, we've got to do it on the other. Oh, okay, great. Thanks so much. That kid might not have ever spoke up and said that, but because I'm walking around or we've got all these listening ears, then we can, have that perspective. So I think that's really beneficial. Some cons, I'll let you go.
Okay, so cons, we've, somebody said there was a love-hate relationship. Is that right? Like with co-teaching. So, as a SPED teacher, I have walked into environments and been like, hey, I'm your co-teacher. And it's like cold, right? It's
like, great, you can go make some copies for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's not necessarily like, okay, I always try to think the best about people, but I mean, it's hard to be treated like an outsider, like a visitor, like, hey, your stuff's in the way, and it's like, well, I don't have anywhere else to put it, so it's gonna stay here, and just things like that. And honestly, that has not happened much to me, but I have heard it from my other colleagues, and that is difficult. That is definitely difficult. And also when the regular teacher's way is the only way, that they're not open to a sharing of ideas, that it's like, well, this is how I've done it, and this is how we're going to do it, and okay, and so that is difficult. And then when things are unpredictable, now part of that is just my personality. I'm a routine person. I want things predictable. But it's hard to walk in and all of a sudden things are completely different than what I expected them to be. And wait a minute, like, I don't think this is going to prepare our kids for the test tomorrow. What are we doing? That type of thing. And so that unpredictability, I'm not saying it's always bad, but there has to be some sort of structure that you have worked out between the two of you, and that you stay with it, and you've communicated if there's going to be a crazy day or an unpredictable day or whatever. And some of those things are unavoidable, we know, but that's just from a SPED perspective. Those are the things that I struggled with.
I have struggled with, well, I've mostly obviously co-taught with Rachel, so it's been great, but I have also had other experience where the co-teacher has come in and I expect this co-teacher to be Rachel-esque, and nobody else is Rachel-esque. So, and they just sat in the back of the classroom and wanted to make copies, or didn't do much. And so I'm expecting, okay, you're coming in and you're gonna interject in my lesson and you're going to know what's going on. And I understand if you come in and we're talking about sine, cosine, and tangent, and you don't know the ins and outs of sine, cosine, and tangent, that's totally fine. I don't care. But at least you're walking around and you're having some commentary and you're doing something other than just sitting in the back of my class. You're behaving as I would believe maybe a para would do, or you're standing by the one student that you think would maybe need the help, or hey, there's a kid in the back, sped kid or reg ed kid or whatever, that has their head down for the most lesson, and I'm trying to make eye contact with you to maybe do some intervention, and you're still not doing anything. And so to me, that's really frustrating. If you're another adult educator in this room and you're doing nothing, whether that's educating or classroom management or whatever. So I think I struggled with that. And that year I asked Rachel multiple times, because I also struggled with, I want to be welcoming to this person. And I want to not have unrealistic expectations, because I know that it even took us a little bit to figure out how to gel well together. And I was trying to not have these expectations of, I know you're not Rachel, but I still want you to do these certain things. But how do I say, hey, can you do these things without, like, I'm not your boss. And I also struggled with the fact that I was 27 years old trying to speak to a much more veteran teacher. And, I'm not here to tell you what to do. And so I didn't, I felt very awkward in that scenario.
Was that part of your training? You said that front load, establish relationship building with your is that part of the training you all went through?
It is, but it's more.
I know it's easier said than done.
Yeah, it's more of
and
a
it's
training.
Personality dependent.
Yeah, it's more of a training of, this is what co-teaching is, and these are the strategies.
Not the roles of
not
each person.
Kind of, but more of a sit here and watch our slideshow presentation of what you should be doing. Not necessarily a team, but you're not bonding with the coach. And you're sitting in a room listening, so you can choose if you're bonding to that person or not, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So depending on the personalities, you're maybe bonding with them. And I didn't have any issue with this person personally at all. I could have sat and had lunch with her and had a great conversation. It's just professionally, we just weren't the most in sync, I think.
I think part of that goes back to a couple of things, like having the shared understanding of what each of your expectation is in this classroom. It's our classroom when we're both here. Like, it's not just my classroom, because these are our kids and we're going to teach our kids, but at the same time, walking that finding that balance between, it's your room, but you're also like the teacher, and like communicating that clearly between the two of you and having that shared understanding. Like, this is what I'm picturing. What are you picturing? And then like I said at the beginning, it didn't happen the first day, right? We had to figure out how each other taught, but then also, like, as the reg ed teacher, be that welcoming and flexible and relinquish the control. And as the sped perspective, coming in and like, you want to not step on people's toes or invade their space or whatever, but it's requires a lot of flexibility on both sides, I think, to have that.
And I think I maybe should have very blatantly had that conversation and said, hey, this is what I would like to see. What are you comfortable doing? How can we, have this checklist of roles, and what are our expectations and roles for each other?
But when you know better, you do better. You
Right.
know, like you probably didn't know at 25, 26, 27.
And I think we just gelled instantly, and so we never necessarily had to sit down and have that conversation, because we just started doing it.
Yeah.
And so then I never had to have that, hey, this is what I would like to see, and vice versa. And I think if we would have sat down and had that conversation, it probably would have gone a lot better from the beginning. And then instead, I kind of maybe developed some resentment or some disappointment throughout that, which was my own personal insecurity and problem with that. But I mean, and it wasn't a negative experience. And we, towards the end of the semester, Rachel even kind of told me, she's like, I think you just need to tell her. She doesn't know, and she doesn't know that you're unhappy with it. If you don't tell her you're unhappy with it, you need to have a conversation.
Maybe she doesn't feel comfortable.
Right.
Too.
Yeah,
It's her
people behave-
insecurities, you know.
Yeah, people
so you don't
behave
know.
like
Right.
based on their experiences. So if
Exactly.
they had a negative experience with someone else,
Right.
you know, that's kind of
Right.
their
Yeah.
go-to.
Yeah. So, and it did definitely improve because we had conversations about it, and it was just something that I just was unfamiliar with. And I kind of had to develop a whole new mindset and relationship around it. And so, yeah, but it was good for me too, to kind of learn that, you know, it is totally different, and you do have to look at it as a whole new relationship. So, and that was low communication for your unsure boundaries. So, and that was low communication on my part as well. So I think from both sides to have that conversation from the beginning, which I think is really important.
So I think when it comes down to it, this is kind of what we boiled down. Like, this is what, like, in order to have an effective co-teaching relationship, like, these are the things for us that were like necessities. A first one right there. So open dialogue and communication. So for us, it wasn't necessarily like we didn't have a common plan time, but we worked around that pretty well. I mean, we texted at night, we emailed about it, we were in each other's classrooms in the morning being like, okay, what's today hold, or what are we doing tomorrow, you know, or whatever. So and if something wasn't okay, we would talk about it before we left, being like, man, I really was uncomfortable with that today. And sometimes it would be like, oh, really? Why? And then I'd be like, yeah, that was really terrible. What do we do tomorrow? Well, tomorrow's a new day. Let's just see what happens, you know, or so, but that's key. I mean, it's just, yeah. So I feel like that's the main one. So
I think classroom management is really, really important to be on the same page with that. Kids know students know if you are in charge or not. And if you're not, they take advantage of that for sure. So obviously both of you are in charge, but
one is more in charge than the other in our situation.
I don't think that has to be the case. But that was the case in our situation.
And it was fine.
It was fine. There was one particular scenario where there was just this group of kids that they just didn't really care for Miss McGowan. They just, not that they didn't care for you, but they just,
we did not gel. It was not, and they definitely had a better relationship with Sydney, and that was
they just
fine.
couldn't really care less what Miss McGowan had to say.
And they cared a little bit more about what
They
Sydney
just
said.
slightly cared what I had to say. And so when they were just being jerks, then she just kind of had to be like, and then I could go take care of the jerks, and that was okay, because then we knew that. And so, but it got worse if she tried to take care of them, because then we knew that then it was just going to be a problem. And so then it just had to be like, she would say, and then I could do it. So yeah, that was, you know, you learn, and that's okay.
I think with the open communication is just those frequent check-ins. So again, those kind of go together of, you know, again, I feel like it's things that we've already talked about. And so I would say this one here about accommodate and modify assignments and tests together. You know, it was, if I tried to do it on my own, I would miss out on important things that Sydney, as the instructional expert, the content expert, would, you know, and so like, do some of those things together, have those conversations together. Don't just assume that I know or that she's going to do it or whatever. So, yeah, I think that would be one thing.
There's a lot of content stuff that, you know, she'd say, hey, let's maybe take this out to help out a kid. And I'd say, well, that comes in to play in a couple chapters. Or I'd say, oh, you can, you know, modify this if that's helpful. And she'd say, well, that's a skill that they, you know, that they should be able to develop themselves, or something like that, that, you know, she might know a little bit on one end and I might know a little bit on another. So to be able to work together and have both those perspectives is really beneficial. Building on each other's strengths, you know, just knowing what makes each other comfortable. It's important to make each other feel important. And little tasks like grading, there were things, and knowing what makes each other comfortable. So she did not grade tests. Not because I didn't want her to grade tests. She didn't want to grade tests. And she was like, no, absolutely not. I'm not grading tests because the points and the stuff like that made her really nervous. And to be honest, it's probably a good thing because I had other classes and the test should be graded equivalent, like equitably. There you go. Yeah. And so, you know, that absolutely makes sense. But you know, homework every now and then. Hey, I'll take this stack of homeworks home. And even sometimes when I'm drowning, she's like, hey, this other class, I'm gonna take this worksheet home. And I'm gonna knock it out for you. Well, that's really nice. You don't have to do that. It's not necessary. That's really nice. Yeah. But just little things like that. Hey, you need to revamp this worksheet. I can do that for you. Hey, we need a bell work for tomorrow. I can do that for you. Little things like that, but like that is really huge.
And then I think the last one was just find what works for your team. So these are the things that worked for us. But you know, Jamie's relationship with her new co-teacher is going to be, it could be very different, you know, and I think we've all kind of had that experience, and that means trial and error. So that goes back to the whole, hey, just try it and then reflect on it and tweak it and try it again and get better at it. So.
Yeah, these were just some fun experience that we had. So our tough students, that AV was our tough guys that were tough. During COVID years, we had this girl that she cried every time I talked to her. I don't know why. I didn't say anything bad. She really didn't. I really didn't. Like she put her head down every time I spoke, and I was like, hey, can we get our head up? You know, do you need to take a walk? Do you need to get a drink? She cried every time anyway. Okay, yeah, anyway. She cried every time I talked to her. And so I don't handle crying super well.
But I took care of a lot of the criers.
I just would be like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do. Yeah. So it's really nice to have another person because I'm like, I just walk over to her and she cries. Like,
You're really scary.
I don't know. I don't know. And I even felt terrible. I'm like, no.
But you know, that was one of the huge benefits is like, you know, we did have better relationship with certain kiddos.
Yeah.
And, that we could just take that crying kid or boyfriend broke up with you for the fourth time or whatever. Yeah, we had that situation. You know, like and we could take
and the
them
boyfriend
out.
was in the class.
It was so loud and obnoxious, and it was just it was ugly. But we could take that kiddo out in the hallway. Class was still happening, and we could have that counseling session, or we could be that encourager. We could be that person for our kid, and that's awesome. You know, so that's another great benefit. So so many great stories. Or stories that we chuckle about or not, and you know, but co-teach, it's the best thing for sure. Questions?
Someone asked, how do you communicate with parents of students who are not on the co-taught roster? I've had nosy parents who think they need to know who the co-teaching is for.
Oh, good question.
Well, I mean, I would say technically every kid is on the co-taught roster because every kid is in our class, so they're all.
We communicated we would split communication. Sometimes the email would come from Sydney, sometimes it would come from me,
But we try to CC each other.
Yes.
And then try to say, I don't know, I feel like communication would come from either, but we would CC and say like my co-teacher, Miss McGowan.
Yeah, but I don't think we ever had the experience of like, who is this co-teacher? Like, I mean, like my answer would be, well, it's for everyone. Everyone in this class is benefiting from the fact that there are two teachers in here and just explaining what those benefits are.
Right.
But yeah, obviously that's not a question you can answer.
Right. Or I mean, I would say we just have two teachers in order to better reach all of our students in the classroom.
As a parent, you should feel good about that.
Yeah, exactly. You should be thrilled about that.
That was one of the first things that we talked about as the co-teachers in the class, like on the first day. Like, yes, you'll notice two of us in here. Sometimes you may go with my
We
co-teachers.
and we did say
you
that
know?
to students.
It's like, it's both of our classrooms.
Mhm.
It's, you know, we are both the teachers. It is for all of you.
Yeah, and we did say, we're like, and so how lucky are you that you have two of us to help every single one of you and
All year long.
yeah, both here all year long. Yeah.
You can also kind of blame the standardized testing, like, hey, this is English 2, they're gonna take a big test. We try to have, we need all hands on deck,
That's
you
a good
know,
point.
and
That's true. Good point.
parents are like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
I get that.
ESC
So,
testing.
even though like we
I blame everything.
personally
on
didn't care
ESC.
about the ESC, you know, like
Yeah.
we didn't, but
Yeah.
that was an expectation. And so we're like, hey, this is a tough tested class. And
Yeah.
that's why we have 2 teachers, you know, so.
I felt like it got easier for us to communicate about co-teaching once the school got on board with putting both of our names on stuff. Like in CIS, our roster said like Bigot Bennett finally, but like before that, when it was just his name, then parents would be like, who's this girl that's emailing me about my kids or whatever. So like on our syllabi for those hours, we would have both of our names, and in CIS, we got them to put both of our names on
I
the
did
roster.
always put her name on a syllabus.
Yeah.
I don't know that the school, like in Power School and camp,
It was
on
a
my-
big deal when ours finally got
yeah,
it.
on my school
That makes
canvas
sense, yeah.
page, I did try to put her name on it. But I don't think it's on there on Power School.
I don't think it was on Power School, but as we got around, I mean, that was, our communication came from us. We were at open house together, like, and so it was just kind of one of those things that like, okay, I mean,
That's a
I
really
feel like
neat
it kind of
perspective,
is on
though.
Power School, but it's like the main teachers listed, but then there's like 2 bodies, like 2 heads, and then you can click on it to see. Cause
But
they
it
do
wouldn't
that,
be like a
yeah.
slash.
yeah, they do that for like choir, those big choir classes in our district anyways. So it usually had like, it would have Davis on there, and then you could click to see who the other one was.
I felt like kids on my caseload and their families definitely knew what was going on because we talked about it at the meeting, you know, like they're in co-taught math, that
Right,
means,
yeah.
you know, blah, 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 but like reg ed kids were always like. Your second invisible teacher, no big deal.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments? I know we're probably, I mean, we started late, so we're probably over. Bye.
Thank you both so much.
Yep.